Welcome to the Rivals 5-Star Countdown. He's Adam Gorney. I'm Jason Fitz. Our analysts have spent the summer watching the best players across the country in high school. We've tried to figure out who the best are of the best. And through this process, we're now pleased to show you the 2025 5-Stars. Gorney, I want to start with the very basic. I got the chance to be with you in Jacksonville a little bit for our camp there. But really, what goes into the rating process when you're looking at maybe shifting these things around and trying to figure out what the best current rating is for a player?
Yeah, some discount, t-shirt football, but it's very important. I've never seen someone who hasn't been exceptional in the summer and 7-on-7 in the camp circuit be bad with pads on. So I think it's really important that there are now so many events, so many opportunities for evaluations around the country. And the Rivals 5-Stars is one big one. There are many others all through the summer. Our guys are on the road all the time seeing these guys, and this is what we came up with heading into the fall.
It hit me when you talked about that, because one thing that was really impressive to me in Jacksonville was seeing best versus best, because we have to acknowledge that some of these kids come from wildly different high schools and much different programs and sizes. And you look at just the opportunity to compete against the best. I feel like that has to be one of the factors. You mentioned t-shirt football, but it's not really t-shirt football. It's also the opportunity to see best versus best in a landscape that we don't necessarily get that all the time.
Yeah, it's so wildly important to us in the evaluation game to see not defensive ends beat up against some wimpy high school kid. We want to see them go up against the future of college football at every position. That's what we saw in Jacksonville. That's why that event was so valuable to us from an evaluation standpoint. But seeing everybody on the same field in those situations is so crucial. It's easy to run routes by some high school sophomore, but when you're doing it against a kid that's committed to Georgia or Ohio State that wants to prove it against you, I think that's really where the rubber meets the road.
Well, like any good countdown, it starts at 24 and we'll go all the way up to number one. We like to save the best for last. Plus, over the course of the show, you'll hear from some of the prospects that we're talking about, and you'll get a ton of analysis from Gordy as we give you everything you need to know. And we'll tell you which schools are standing out, getting the most recruits. So, Gordy, let's start at number 24. And in at number 24 from Toledo, Ohio, Carter Lowe, offensive lineman, 6'6", 290. What can you tell the world about him?
Yeah, we had seen him on tape a lot, and he had dominated in Toledo high school football. He was big, mean, physical, and athletic. It was a great mix of everything that he has. And we've also talked to a lot of coaches about him and other personnel people, and Ohio State absolutely loved him. They targeted him high on the board, and I see why. He looks like a lot of the offensive linemen that they have there now. He's very Paris Johnson-esque, maybe down the line. I think he was a little bit deer in the headlights at the Rivals 5-Star just because he hasn't seen that level of competition before. We moved him down a little bit, actually, but kept him as a 5-star because we really believe that mix of power and athleticism is going to be really something special down the line, especially as he gets used to this level of football.
I mean, let's be honest, too, at the Rivals 5-Star, some of the defensive linemen were they were ahead. They were absolutely behemoths, and we'll see some of them on this list. So how you sort of figure that out, offensive line, defensive line drills can be really difficult. Kudos to you guys to try and figure it out. Again, 6'6", 290. I just want to stress the mass. Like, that's a massive human being at 6'6", 290. And if anyone's ever been to Ohio, you know that you can yell OH and somebody will yell IO back. It's important. Carter who's committed right now to Ohio State. So he yells OH. And the next person on our list, Naim Offord out of Birmingham, also an Ohio State commit, can turn around and yell IO right back to him. So what can you tell everybody about that defensive back?
Yeah, and Ohio State fans are going to be thrilled with this list. There's a lot of Ohio State people on it and a lot of commits. Naim Offord, Ric Flair once said, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And honestly, what we want to see more from Offord is getting out there at national events and beating the man. He is a great looking cornerback. Sometimes we fall in love with these 6'2", 6'3" cornerbacks in the NFL, maybe at the highest elite level. Those guys are 6'2", 6'3". A lot of the NFL teams are starting to like smaller kind of bulldoggy type cornerbacks. He's a little bit of both. He's 6'2", he's filled out. He's physical, he's athletic, he can make plays on the ball. Just think of those Ohio State cornerbacks over the years that have really dominated. That's what Naim Offord brings to the table. Now, it's going to be hard on the Buckeyes to keep him. Auburn and Alabama are trying to keep him in state. He's a Birmingham kid. I think Alabama would be the one to watch right now, but Auburn is recruiting so well that there's going to be some of that involved. But Devin Sanchez and Offord are very close. I think if they're bookend cornerbacks for the Buckeyes, that's shut down defense in Columbus.
Well, next up on the list at number 22, we go all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida. Solomon Thomas, the offensive lineman. Again, behemoth of a man, 6'3", 280. What can you tell us about Solomon?
Yeah, mean SOB. I mean, that's what I would say about Solomon Thomas. There's playing to the whistle, playing through the whistle, and then what Solomon Thomas does. Like, he is just going to go out there and physically manhandle and dominate every opponent, so that when that opponent's girlfriend sees him, they have no respect left for him. I mean, Solomon Thomas is just a mean kid who likes to get after it. And he is also that kid that has that athleticism. He's not just overpowering people. He's moving. He's blocking down at the second level. He's doing everything. Now, Florida State has his commitment. It looked like earlier in the summer, either Florida or especially LSU was going to be able to flip him. But after another visit to Tallahassee late in June, Tramel Jones, the quarterback commit there, told me they think they have Solomon Thomas wrapped up. So I think that's going to be important to watch.
Now, that's a big commitment for Florida State. And look, we've had 2 offensive linemen in this conversation, which we should acknowledge. Like right now, if you look on Sundays, it's hard to find a lot of offensive linemen that can step in and play. And if you look at the college game, guys are asked to acclimate faster than ever, especially with spread offenses the way they are. Like, I find encouragement out of the fact that we've already named 2 offensive linemen, because let's face it, that's become an area of need at every level of football at this point.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think especially the interior guys, defensive linemen on the interior are no just longer space eaters. They are gap shooters. They're athletic. They want to get into the backfield, not just block things up at the line of scrimmage. So you need your guards and centers to be just as athletic. They just can't take up space across that offensive line because they're going to get blown by. Solomon Thomas is a guy that can move his feet really, really well. For someone so big, he's very athletic as well.
All right, so next up on our list at number 21, running backs might not get a lot of love in the NFL, but they're getting love right out of the gates for us. Jordan Davidson out of Santa Ana, California comes in, running back 5'11", 230. What can you tell everybody about Jordan?
Yeah, this is something obviously that is a trend in the NFL. Not only paying running backs, and that seems to be on an uptick again. Okay, but taking them in the first round. Is there a first round value in college running backs? And the answer is probably not, but this class is so elite at running back that it's hard to keep Davidson out. Now, he did come in big this summer. We're not going to hide that. He was probably 230 plus. But at the Rivals 5-star, the Oregon commit looked phenomenal. I talked to Brandon Jacobs. He's also a big running back, probably has a soft spot in his heart for big running backs. He won a Super Bowl with the New York Giants. He knows what he's talking about. And he said that Davidson was the most NFL-ready running back at that event, and that event was loaded at running back. So he compared him to Le'Veon Bell. I think Davidson fashions himself a little like Ezekiel Elliott, where he's not going to just blow you away with top-end speed. That's not his game. But in a phone booth, he's tough to tackle. He's super patient. He can burst through the line. He waits for the blocker and then explodes through it. Those are the kind of things that Davidson projecting, there are more wow running backs in high school football than Jordan Davidson. But when you project out, I think that's very telling.
Also, I mean, I got to watch Brandon do those drills with the running backs, and it was pretty incredible to watch Jordan immediately absorb. And I think I've been sort of dying on this hill until you've been there and stood there and seen exactly what this looks like, where they get one drill and then they go to the back of the line. And the whole time they might get 30 seconds out of a 5-minute period where they actually get to show what they can do. So they have to take the coaching quickly. He was one that stood out, as you only had to tell him once. And all of a sudden, Brandon was giving him little tricks on which foot to plant where. And the next time he'd run up, it was consistent. Like you told him once, he nailed it. So I think coachability absolutely stood out, just getting to watch him do that with a great coach helping him figure out. Not every running back had that. He certainly did. So kudos for Oregon, by the way. We'll give Oregon a little bit of love throughout the course of the show, but Oregon moving into the Big Ten, they're definitely moving in by bringing an influx of talent in.
Yeah, and you want a big pounder running back in the backfield when you go to icy Iowa in the middle of November. This isn't a kid that is going to need the comfort of 82 degrees in the Coliseum every weekend. This is a kid who's going to pound the ball between the tackles, but surprisingly can kind of get outside and make things happen. He is phenomenal at the high school level in arguably the best high school football league with his vision and his patience and then his burst to get through. Now, you don't want patience in the hole too long. You want to see it and then get through it, and that's exactly what he does.
Well, because you got guys like our next guy coming through that hole. Jonah Williams, Galveston, Texan, at linebacker is our number 20 5-star coming in at this. Uncommitted. We haven't said that word yet. Uncommitted, yeah. Gorney. That's a rarity here.
It's incredible, yeah, that in August of your junior, heading into your senior year, that you'd still be uncommitted. But Jonah Williams, we're actually uncommitted on his future position as well. Like, he wants to be a safety. He thinks he's a safety, but he'd be a big safety. And I kind of make the comparison to slow tight ends who should be offensive tackles and will be first rounders. Slower safeties, bigger safeties should drop down into the box and be outstanding outside linebackers and edge rushers who can play in space and tackle. And that's exactly what Jonah Williams is. If he stays at safety, he'll be very good. If he moves down to linebacker, he'll be great. LSU and Texas A&M are probably his top two. He's told me on numerous occasions that being closer to family, having his family come up from Galveston, which is certainly down there on the Gulf of Mexico. So College Station would be the closest, 2.5 hours away. I believe Baton Rouge is doable at about 4.5. So I think those two teams have emerged, two elite defenses. Mike Elko takes over at College Station. This is a big one to keep in state.
All right, next up on our list at number 19, Hilton Stubs out of Jacksonville, a defensive back, committed to Miami right now. What have you seen in Hilton?
Yeah, what I saw this summer that stood out the most is that at Rivals 5-Star Media Day, Hilton Stubs, Drake Stubs, he goes by Drake, he walked into the media day with about an entourage of about 10 guys. And at the time, he was committed to USC, and I kind of looked at some people and I was like, that's a lot of people to be flying across the country every weekend to see you play. And right after that, he had decommitted. It looked like Florida was going to get him, but then he told me that his official visit to Miami just really sold him on what they're going to do. They're loading up on defense. They got Zaquan Patterson in the last recruiting class. They're very, very talented. They have a lot of skill on that team, and Stubs is going to fit right in. Some balls were caught on him at Rivals 5-Star, but not uncontested. He was always around the ball. He flew around the field, and he has great length. I think that's what you're looking for in your safeties. Plus, he really trusts himself and has a lot of confidence. He trusts his eyes. That's what we want to see. So, like, when he wants to react, he goes. He doesn't think about it too long. So whether it's being physical and hitting, he has no problem doing that. Whether it's knocking down passes with his length or turning and running on deep balls or seam balls down the middle, Stubs can do it all.
Well, we'll stick with another uncommitted as we go next on our list to number 18, Nathaniel Ating from Bradenton, Florida, linebacker, 6'2", 205. Again, rarity here that we're uncommitted, Gorney.
Yeah, he still has a top 5, but you do wonder if Notre Dame is the team to beat. The Irish have been involved for so long. His brother, Jeremiah, played there before going to the NFL and having a great career there. And then he just fits what Notre Dame linebackers look and play like. At the Rivals 5-Star, Ating almost just wanted to hit people. Like, you could just tell he was revving up for it and then dialed it back. But he plays with that energy, plays with that enthusiasm, that toughness, that physical mindset that really fits in with South Bend and the guys that they've had before. He kind of thinks he's like Jalen Smith a little bit. He doesn't have that length, but he does have that ability to cover ground and get people onto the ground. Like, he sees ball, he gets ball. Like, that's how he plays the game. He runs all over the field. And what I love most about him, why we bumped him up, is he just has a passion to play football. So Florida is trying to keep him in state. He's originally from the Mid-Atlantic, but is now down at IMG. USC is trying to convince him to come out west. And then Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame. I would say Notre Dame has the edge, but I don't think he's close to a decision yet.
He also has, I don't know a better way to describe it other than across the field pop. Like, when you're standing on the practice field and you see him, your eyes gravitate. And the number of times it felt like he's just one of those guys that people say, who is that? You know, that's just a part of what he is. So we'll see where that one goes. At number 17, Trey McNutt, Cleveland, Ohio, another DB here. An Oregon commit here, 6 foot, 180. What do you like about him?
Yeah, the Ohio State legacy, and the Buckeyes just never really got going on his recruitment, especially late. They think they backed off as others kind of came on strong here. But McNutt, I saw him at the USA Flag Tournament out here in Southern California. He's been around. He trains in Houston, so Texas A&M was very involved in this. He feels comfortable down there. But once he went out to Oregon a few times, he really got comfortable. He has length and smarts. I mean, he can really kind of diagnose plays before they're going to happen. And then he has the athleticism and length to go and make plays. So that's what makes him so special. He's also a physical kid. He's one of these kids that kind of looks like he's running downhill to pop somebody coming across the middle. And maybe that's being taken out of the game a little bit, but it's certainly still important that receivers have to know that Trey McNutt is kind of sitting there and waiting for them as they come across the middle. What I love most about him, though, is that he's going to cover that back end. Nobody's going to get behind him. And then if they ever do, he has the length to make up ground and the athleticism to go up and make a play.
If he wants to make Ohio State regret it, he'll get that opportunity now that Oregon joins the Big Ten, which is trauma, and I love every ounce of it.
Yeah, and don't forget, the last time Oregon played at Ohio State, they went in and whooped them. So I think there's maybe some of that coming on, but the Big Ten is a very tough conference. We'll see how Oregon does.
Number 16, Jamie French. We're back in Florida, Jacksonville. Wide receiver here. Like, wide receivers become such just a gift to college football, to the NFL. Feels like there's always wide receivers, but you've got somebody 6'2", 175 at 16 on this list. What do you like about him?
Yeah, and to be honest, at the Rivals 5-star, he didn't have his best day. Like, he was good and he was impressive, but we've seen him be better. And that's why I think getting out so often and seeing people at so many events and getting a real book on each guy is so important, because Jamie French has been unstoppable this offseason. He's so smooth. He's so long. He has such great hands, and he's a phenomenal route runner. I compare him to Garrett Wilson, like a guy who walks in the room and you're like, he kind of looks pretty smooth. He runs pretty well, but then he catches everything, gets open against everybody, and competes. So I think that's kind of where we're projecting him. LSU, Tennessee, Miami are probably three of the schools that are competing most for him. It's still sort of up in the air into where he's going, but betting against Florida receivers over time has been a bad bet. They usually win. So he's a Jacksonville kid who's put up big numbers in high school, had a phenomenal summer, and deserved a bump up to 5-star.
Next up on the list at number 15, Javen Hilson out of Cocoa, Florida, defensive end, 6'5", 230. I mean, obviously, this is a name a lot of people have been keeping an eye on. What do you see here?
I talked to his quarterback at Cocoa, Brady Hart, at a tournament this year, and I said, what's the story on Hilson? And he said, never stops working, is always in the gym, always on the field, perfecting his craft, wants to get after it, and wants to put quarterbacks into the dirt. And so I loved hearing that. That was phenomenal. He wasn't like, hey, this kid, he's sitting at home doing nothing and just resting on his 6'5" laurels. He did not come to the Rivals 5-star, which was disappointing because I would have loved to see him against national competition. But where I think he kind of separated himself is that we saw other more highly ranked defensive ends. And from seeing Hilson at other events, we preferred him. So, it was very interesting, his recruitment this summer. He was an early Alabama commitment, backed off that pledge. And then it became down to Florida State. He committed there. Texas got very involved, and he decided to stick with Florida State. He grew up watching the Noles play. I think he's very Brian Burns-esque, maybe not the length, but certainly that speed off the edge. So that is some very high accolades for him, but he's a very talented kid and a motor that doesn't stop. That's what I want to see out of defensive ends. Guys that can, into the third and fourth quarter, can get offensive tackles tired when the game is really on the line. He's getting better and other guys are getting tired.
All right, Gorney, next up on the list at number 14, Riley Pedraza, the linebacker, 6'3", 200 pounds. Again, another linebacker here on the list, another Ohio State commit here. Tell us all about Riley.
Yeah, he was a 4-star coming into the summer, and he walked into media day at Rivals 5-star in Jacksonville, and he might have been the best looking player there. It's hard to believe that he hadn't been moved up earlier, but after seeing him there, absolutely a 5-star, has every look of an NFL linebacker. and then he gets onto the field and you absolutely love him. His junior film is some of the best I watched. He's downhill and he hits. Then he gets into the backfield and he hits. Then he comes off the edge and hits. Then someone tries to stretch something to the sideline. He gets after them and puts them down. He is a very physical kid, very mature, all about business. He's not messing around on the football field. And then he has the height and the length to tip passes, to knock things down, to maybe pick off something. He can diagnose and then come up and hit on screens, on everything. He's always around the football. It looked for a long time like Texas was going to be the team to get him. When he came to 5-star and told us that USC and Ohio State were his top two, we actually thought he was blowing a little smoke and just trying to keep us off the Texas hint, but it wasn't. He told me during an interview for this that Texas was actually 4th on his list. Ohio State, USC, and Texas A&M were the 3 schools involved with him. Ohio State got him, and he's going to be phenomenal in Columbus.
I cannot even describe to everybody the buzz that was around him after that camp, because just sitting around you guys that are analyzing these players, it felt like everybody had fallen in love with what they saw at that camp. So I'm really happy to see Riley on this list as he comes in at number 14. We go to 13 now, a name we also saw a lot in Jacksonville. Harlem Barry comes in, running back, 6 foot 180, committed to LSU. Another running back on the list here. What do you like about Harlem?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Barry is that he can do it all. We moved him to all-purpose back because almost half, if not more, of his game is going to be jet sweeps, catching the ball out of the backfield, lining up in the backfield, coming into the slot, and becoming a problem that way. Now, he can run between the tackles. He can take some hits. He's tough to tackle in a crowd. He can kind of escape out of there. If there's any question about his game, is he durable enough to handle the SEC week in and week out without gaining weight? And then not only the SEC, but then the NFL. He's going to run a great 40 time. He did at the Rivals 5-star. He has on numerous occasions before. So in terms of the combine, there's no concern. He's going to blow people away. But he is going to have to get a little bit bigger because there's going to be some big boys in the SEC looking to take his head off. And that shouldn't affect his speed much, but it is something to watch. But in terms of a playmaker, a dynamic playmaker down the field who could also run the ball in the backfield, but be used so many ways in that offense, I think there's just a whole lot to like.
All right, so we go to number 12 on the list. We go to my original hometown, Las Vegas, Nevada, where Douglas Utu comes in, the offensive lineman, 6'6", 301, Tennessee commit. UNLV couldn't keep him. Shocking. So Douglas headed to Tennessee. What do you see here?
Yeah, if Vegas is about like flash and glitz and glamour, Utu is the total opposite. He's all about keeping his mouth shut, going out there and dominating, just totally dominating. And I'm not being hyperbolic here. We've seen him at numerous events over the last 3 years, and I cannot remember him ever losing a one-on-one rep. He is just so technically sound. He kind of sits down and has such a power base, and then his hands are phenomenal. He just does not lose. Like, he might be a right tackle. That's why he's probably not in the top 10, maybe top 5. He might move inside, but that position versatility is actually a huge benefit to Utu because he can play anywhere. He's never going to complain about it, and he's just going to go out and dominate. So, his recruitment was kind of still quiet just because he didn't talk about it a lot. Michigan was involved, Ohio State, some schools out west. I thought Oregon had a real chance at him, but Tennessee got him. He's going to be phenomenal, especially in a spread offense like that where he could sit there and block all day long, but in that offense, he's not going to have to. No one is going to touch the quarterback wherever Utu plays.
No, that's a big get for Tennessee for sure. Next up on the list at number 11, another offensive lineman, also 6'6", but a light 284 comparatively, Michael Fusi out of Lewisville, Texas. What do you like here?
Yeah, he has been maybe the most athletic and long offensive lineman in this class. So that's what we love about him. And he's also not totally maxed out. We sometimes, and in error, we've fallen in love with these 6'6", 320 guys. A lot of times we get it right. Caden Proctor looks like he's, going to be a first round draft pick. But Fusi is not totally filled out yet. We love that. So at 284, he has a frame with almost no body fat. He's going to easily get over to 300 pounds. Texas and Oklahoma are battling it out for him. You talk to both sides and they feel mildly confident about where they stand. But he also has a mean streak. He's not just an athletic kid with length who gets pushed over by defensive linemen who are big and tough too. He gets after it. He gets in people's faces. We love that kind of spirit in offensive linemen that we rank 5-star. He has that athleticism too. So no one's going to get very close to him because of his length, but no one's going to mess with him either because he's a physical kid.
I just love the thought of being 6'6", 284 with almost no body fat. That's just, that's wild. They're built different, Gorney. They're built different. All right, so we are now into the top 10 of our Rivals 5-star, and we start that top 10 at number 10 with DJ Pickett, the ATH. We all know this from our video game days. The athlete, 6'4", 180, committed to LSU. So tell everybody about DJ.
Yeah, he's just a physical specimen. Like, and I hate to use this word, but freak definitely comes to mind. Like, just think about what 6'4", 180 looks like, and 180 might be generous. He is so long. He's like spider-like. So teams have talked to him about playing offense and defense. He's been very interested in that. Oregon was one of the schools that was very involved with him in terms of playing both ways because at 6'4", 180, that's wide receiver size. But he could play safety. Some have talked about playing cornerback with him. LSU is a perfect school for his abilities because they can figure out, as a staff that has a phenomenal history as DBU, whether he's a safety long term, whether he can play corner at that size, which is almost hard to believe because of that length, but that is what stands out so much about him. He will have to fill out a little bit. Easily could get over 200 pounds if he just sits and gets into a college weight room. And then at 6'4", 210 with that length, it's hard to believe that he's not going to be a special player in Baton Rouge.
All right, so at number 9, we get one of the star quarterbacks that we all had our eye on in Jacksonville, obviously. Keelan Russell out of Duncansville, Texas, committed to Alabama. Tell everybody about Keelan.
Yeah, 9th nationally, and this might be as low as he goes. He could even move up higher from here. He was absolutely phenomenal this summer. Maybe the quarterback that had the best summer, just in terms of every event he went to, he was great. Our event at the Rivals 5-star, he was at the Elite 11, he was at numerous OT7s. That's what I also liked about him. He didn't hide. He didn't just rest on his laurels of being great at Duncanville and having a dominant junior season. I've compared him to Jaden Daniels. He's tall and skinny, but not as skinny as Daniels was in high school. He's a little bit more filled out, probably a little bit better of a passer at the same stage. We forget that Daniels went to Arizona State and his career kind of fluttered until he got to LSU and really started to jack it back up until he was the 2nd pick overall this year. That's what Russell is when Daniels was at LSU, a playmaker who can find receivers all over the field easily, can also escape. Now, he's not exactly a dual threat guy where everything is run, but there will be designed runs for him at Alabama. That staff, Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan, did a phenomenal job with Michael Penix at Washington. Keelan Russell is stepping into a situation where he was far more advanced at the high school level than Penix was. So he's going to have great receivers around him. He's going to have a great offense at Alabama, and he has all the skill to be really special.
Yeah, and he absolutely crushed it when they got into the scrimmage opportunities too. Like, you can just see control, intelligence, read. I mean, he's got everything you could possibly. Alabama fans should be really excited. All right, Adam Gorney, we are continuing the countdown. We're into the top 10 at number 8, Elijah Griffin, Savannah, Georgia, defensive tackle, uncommitted at this point. A D tackle this high on the list. What do you love?
Yeah, he kind of is an end tackle. We think he probably grows into a full-time defensive tackle. He's just built like a brick house, if you know what I'm saying. He's just massive from shoulder to shoulder. So, if there's one criticism about Griffin is that he probably doesn't leave Savannah enough. He needs to get to national events and compete against national players and show just how dominant he was. I remember seeing him, I believe 3 years ago at the All-American Combine in San Antonio. He walked in to the hotel and immediately just filled up the lobby. I mean, he's just a massive human being with muscle filled out, physical, great off the edge as a young kid. Now has moved inside. He doesn't play elite competition in high school, but there's no doubt that this kid is special. Georgia, Miami, USC are a top 3. It would be a stunner, like an absolute shock if he didn't end up at Georgia. I'm not betting against Georgia defensive linemen, not only in Athens dominating, not only with Trey Scott coaching them and Kirby Smart coaching them, but also projected into the NFL.
Well, another big boy on the interior defensive line from Manchester, Georgia at number 7, Justice Terry comes in, another D tackle, 6'5", 275, also uncommitted. What do you like here?
Yeah, for people that don't know him, go to his social media and look at him lifting weights. He's country strong. Like, he's from Manchester, Georgia. That's Southwest Georgia. He is just filled out and physical and tough. And he was at the Under Armour Atlanta camp and was super impressive. He dialed it back this summer, kind of as he's working through his recruitment. He was committed to Georgia early on, backed off that pledge when he fell in love with USC during a visit, then realized it was too far away from home, and now will probably take it to the early signing period with Georgia, Florida State, and Alabama all trying. It would, again, be a mild stunner if he didn't end up at Georgia. He and Griffin as a tag team on that inside is just devastating for college football. But Alabama is trying hard here. He's a big physical kid, no bad weight, and again, has played inside, and just destroys people.
Yeah, and I mean, you got big boys from Georgia with a program right there that churns out NFL players. Like, I think we all know why Georgia's a heavy favorite. All right, next up on the list, then coming in at number 6, Devin Sanchez, the DB, a high recruit here for Ohio State. What do you like?
Yeah, when you see him in person, when you walk up onto him, you're like, man, that kid looks like he's going to be a safety. Then he gets on the field and he starts playing, and he's so smooth and so dominant that you're like, yeah, I totally buy that he's Sauce Gardner, Jalen Ramsey, elite NFL big cornerback. I think that's what stands out most about him. Sometimes these guys who are 6'3", 6'4" at corner, they turn like battleships. They're slow. They could kind of mask that at the high school level, but in college, they start to get exposed. We don't think that's going to happen with Sanchez at all. He's always in stride with wide receivers. He can go up and get the ball athletically. He has long arms to really jam people at the line. He can drive them to the sideline. He kind of limits what receivers could do on the field. So all of the things that we like out of like the elite NFL corners, we see already in Sanchez. He's going to go to Ohio State, be coached up by some elite guys, be tested in the Big Ten, and then we project him as a first-round guy. He has speed, length. NFL teams are going to love him.
Now we get to the top 5, my friend, and let's just give a little bit of a sneak peek here. There's going to be some runs on some quarterbacks. In at number 5, Juju Lewis out of Carrollton, Georgia, USC commit. We had the chance to see him at the 5-star. Juju coming in. Obviously, a lot of people love a million things about him. What stands out to you?
Yeah, our former number 1 player, we decided to move down a few spots, but certainly not plummet him. I think that would be ridiculous and unnecessary. I mean, in terms of on-field talent, decision-making, and all of the abilities that you see from him at every event, he continues to be one of the most impressive players in this class. What I love about him is that during off-season, like 7-on-7 and camps, one, he shows up to them all and competes at them all and looks very good. But where he's best, especially early on, has been on Friday nights. He is such a dynamic playmaker. He throws the deep ball so well, but he doesn't force it. He doesn't force highlight plays. So if he has to check down, he does. He doesn't make bad decisions. He doesn't turn the ball over. That's most important with quarterbacks. If he misses, he's not missing high, flailing balls going out of bounds. All of the things that you're looking for in the most intelligent quarterbacks, the guys that you're going to trust and the guys that are getting on the field, Juju Lewis has. So is he number 1 still? No, he's moved down a little bit because others have had better summers and project better. But he is very, very special. He remains committed to USC, but Colorado and Indiana are sort of poking around. We'll see how that plays out. But he's a very, very special quarterback with a lot of tools.
Well, and Lincoln Riley's never shied away from slighter framed quarterbacks. I don't want to say somebody 6'1" is small, but definitely when you saw Juju against the other quarterbacks, he's smaller in stature than the other guys are. So, but that might be a perfect fit for Lincoln Riley and his offense.
Yeah, totally. And I think in today's game that means less. Like Bryce
Very
Young
fair.
was the number one pick, and he's way smaller. Now, will NFL teams, and we've had this discussion, will NFL teams look at that young Stroud pick now that CJ Stroud had such a rookie season? Now we'll see how this plays out over the next few years. Um, but will they shy away from that smaller quarterback? We don't know. But even still, Bryce Young would have been a top 3 or 4 quarterback in any class.
At number 4 on our list, and the highest rated wide receiver that we have, Daran Moore out of Duncansville, Texas, the Oregon commit, 6'1", 165. What makes him the highest rated wide receiver?
Yeah, he was. I do believe that he would have been a 5-star in the 2024 class. He's that dynamic of a playmaker, but he also, what I think makes him most special is that he makes impossible catches look easy. So I've seen him numerous times. The ball is sailing out of bounds. He goes up one-handed, taps his feet in bounds, brings down the ball, and it's like no problem at all. So he can do a lot. You can give him the ball short and he can make people miss and use his speed down the field. He'll go across the middle, and defensive backs or linebackers can't keep up with him. Where he's most special is going deep and being that deep threat. So, it looked like he had been committed to LSU early on. It looked like that they had the holy trinity of Bryce Underwood, Harlem Barry, and Doran Moore. I think Brian Kelly was just slobbering about what he could do with them in that offense. He decommitted from LSU, and it looked like he was going to immediately flip to Texas. That didn't happen. He took a late visit to Oregon. He and his family fell in love with it. He's very close with his mom, and they sort of made that decision together. In Will Stein's offense, just knowing how they're going to run spread, they're going to get the ball to Doran Moore a whole lot, and he's going to make a lot of things happen with it.
All right, so number 3 on our list, we are almost to the top, and this is our top-ranked offensive lineman out of Charlotte, North Carolina, David Sanders Jr. I'll ask you the same question. Uncommitted, what makes him the best of the offensive linemen?
Yeah, I think a lot of things. One, there was a conversation to make him number 1 in the country. I think that is still a possibility. I don't think anybody has totally class number 1 like last year, where Jeremiah Smith was just so much better than everybody that you had to make a wide receiver number 1. But what makes Sanders so great is that early on in his career, he was big and athletic. And then as you've seen him from sophomore now into junior, which we fully expect going into his senior year, he's gained confidence in himself and his ability. And so that physical side has come out, where he's just really a monster now. So he's physical and tough. He gets after people, but he's also insanely athletic. So I think, that's why Tennessee, Ohio State, Nebraska, all these schools, Georgia, are going after him so hard, is because he has that perfect mix of, he's not just this big lumbering 6'6" offensive tackle where you worry about his feet. He's athletic as could be, and then he can put people in the ground. So that's what NFL teams are going to love about him. That's why he's so highly rated, and that's why he's number 3 in the country.
At number 2, back to the quarterbacks, Bryce Underwood from Belleville, Michigan. Sorry, Bryce. The LSU commit. What stands out to you about Bryce?
Yeah, he is a physical specimen who is insanely dynamic throwing and running the ball. So he's going to bring you everything. And I don't want to say Cam Newton, but there's Cam Newton vibes there. He's just big. He could fire it all over the field. Little mechanically needs to work on some things, but again, not just so totally polished that he's a finished product. We love that. He's super confident in himself, but doesn't get over the top with it. Definitely a guy that's in the conversation for number 1 overall, but also someone that didn't do the Elite 11, didn't do Rivals 5-star, did some OT7 work this summer, but that was it. We want to see him more on a national level, dominate against national competition. Of course, he's number 2 in the country, so we think he's very, very elite, but we kept him off that number 1 line because there is some mechanical work to do. But in terms of the tools, in terms of molding a player, you want them to look like Bryce Underwood.
Any surprise that a kid in Big Ten country ends up at LSU?
Yeah, so a little bit, but not really. When he went down there numerous times, he fell in love with that staff. He fell in love with Brian Kelly, knows him from his work at Notre Dame. Joe Sloan obviously is a big time guy there. And I think he saw the success that Jaden Daniels had in that offense. You know that there are going to be elite wide receivers to throw to, and they're going to throw him the ball. So, Michigan was around for a little bit. Ohio State had their guy, so they didn't really want to mess with Underwood. And so I think LSU gave him the opportunity of, hey, I know Brian Kelly from the Midwest, so I know him from his Notre Dame days. It also gets me to the SEC. It also gets me to the school that just had Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow.
Well, you mentioned Ohio State had their guy. Drum roll, please, as we now hit number 1 on the countdown, the top player in all the land, according to the Rivals 5-star countdown. A new number 1, Tavian St. Clair from Bellefontaine, Ohio, comes in. The Ohio State commit. We saw him at 5-star. Absolutely incredible player. Incredible to watch him just go through drills. What makes him the number 1 player in the country?
Yeah, heading into the summer, a lot of what we had was just the book on his junior season, his sophomore season. He doesn't play elite competition, so we were a little conservative on where we were going to rank him. By the end of the summer, he was clearly not only in high 5-star territory, but number 1 overall territory. And that's where we settled. What we like about him is that he's the complete package. So he is most comfortable throwing in the pocket, and he delivers it perfectly on almost every throw. It's a beautiful ball. It's effortless. It pops off his hand. He can do it all. He can throw on the run. He has no problem doing that. He can run when needed, although he's not going to do that as often. Phenomenal teammate, super intelligent and super mature. And going to a program, and rankings don't matter about where you're going, but going to a program that has recruited wide receivers maybe better than any team in the country. So he was also someone that literally never messed around with his recruitment. Once Ohio State got involved, he committed, and that was basically it. Like, he knew he wanted to go to Ohio State. He was mature enough not to chase NIL money around the country, not to chase clout and attention. He did everything possible to stake his claim as the number 1 player this summer, whether it was at OT7. We wanted to see him, how was his timing with receivers? How was his chemistry with receivers he hasn't played with before? He did great. He goes to the Elite 11 and was outstanding. He came to our event and was maybe the best quarterback there. So, in the NFL draft, there's 18 of the last 20 have been quarterbacks going number 1. We wanted a quarterback. We also got a great book on him over the summer, and we've made St. Clair number 1 in the country.
If there's anything I learned in Jacksonville, it's that the future of the college position of quarterback is stronger than I ever could have imagined, because watching these kids compete, including Tavian, was absolutely incredible. It's also incredible to see somebody react to finding out that they are the number 1 player in all the land. We had the chance to catch up with Tavian. Check it out.
He's a great example of hometown kid, small town dreams coming true, and he's an inspiration for not only just us, but people all across this country. So let's make sure the world knows that the number 1 player, according to Rivals website, lives here in Bellefontaine High School and is playing football for the Chieftains. Hey!
That's a good start to my day, I guess. But, we still got to get the job done tonight, so let's just go out there and have fun. Let's just go and do what we do, and show the world why we're number 1 all around here. So let's go. Here we go. Hey. Let's get a family on 3. 1, 2, 3. Family!
That's it for us here. Be sure to stick with Rivals as we continue this process of trying to figure out who the best in all the land are. You can follow Adam Gorney, follow me, Jason Fitz, and follow Rivals everywhere for your 5-star information. Thanks for hanging out.